Hello, BookTube. Who's up for a morning mail haul? Let's see what kind of stuff we have. This, of course, is a Thursday, which means that I will, sometime later today, put on pants and maybe flatten my hair and go out into the adult real world. But before that, we've got this little fantasy playpen known as BookTube. So let's see what we have. Hoping these are all going to be 2018 books, because I'm not really, the shop is kind of closed for 2017. I think I'll probably, at Open Letters Weekly, I'll probably review a few more new books there. And of course, my work in other venues will appear throughout the rest of the month. But in terms of active consideration, I'm really sort of fully living in 2018. So let's see what we got here. So this is Harvard University Press. Oh, okay, great. All right, this comes out in February, and it is right up my alley. It's by David Engerman, and it's called The Price of Aid: Economic Cold War in India. That is going to be fascinating. Not to everybody, but to me, certainly. In The Price of Aid, the author argues that superpowers turned to foreign aid as a tool of the Cold War. Absolutely true, and nothing wrong with that at all. India, the largest of the ex-colonies, stood at the center of American and Soviet aid competition. Officials of both superpowers saw developmental aid as an instrument of pursuing geopolitics through economic means. But Indian officials had different ideas, seeking superpower aid to advance their own economic visions, thus bringing external resources into the domestic debates about India's economic future. I know that some of you out there are starting to go to sleep at a description like that, but that description actually describes the premise of a very interesting book, so I am definitely on board. I think the whole discussion, it's only bound to get more pointed as time goes on, but I think the whole discussion of weaponized economic aid as a sort of adjunct and large replacement to military conflict, it's absolutely fascinating. I'm always fascinated, and I think I will continue to be fascinated by any theories about why large-scale military conflict ended with World War II. Why nation-to-nation military conflict ended with World War II and became instead this messy quagmire of proxy wars and colonial wars and jungle war and brush war that always stopped short of superpowers declaring war on each other. I find that whole thing fascinating, and I know that the nuclear deterrent is a big part of it, but I also have a feeling that money plays a big part in creating a world in which superpowers no longer go to war. But I don't. That's not what this book will be about. But it will touch on that. I will find it fascinating. Oh, great. Okay, I requested this one. This is due in March. It's by Gordon McAlpine, who wrote a book called Woman with a Blue Pencil that I couldn't stand, and it's called Holmes Entangled. And it sounded really fun to me. Sherlock Holmes, now in his 70s, retired from investigation and peaceably disguised as a professor at Cambridge, is shaken when a modestly successful author in his late 60s named Arthur Conan Doyle calls upon him at the university. This Conan Doyle, notable for historical adventure stories, science fiction, and a 3-volume history of the Boer War, but no detective tales, somehow knows of the false professor's true identity and pleads for investigative assistance. Someone is trying to kill Conan Doyle. Who? Why? Good questions, but what intrigues Holmes most is how the middling scribbler ascertained Holmes' identity in the first place, despite the detective's perfect disguise. Holmes takes the case. Tell me that doesn't sound irresistible. I love Sherlock Holmes pastiche fiction, and that premise alone will get me reading. This thing's, it's nothing. It's an hour's work. So, but that I absolutely had to request a copy when I read that. There's one thing I'm looking for in this mail haul that I'm not finding. So, it's a little disturbing. I am going to be part of a read-along. I am still, believe it or not, after all this time, all these videos on BookTube, I am still trying to figure out how to do read-alongs. I'm still trying to figure out how to do that. There are some logistical problems. There are some statistical problems. But I signed on for a read-a-thon, or read-along, later in the month of the Sparsholt Affair by Alan Hollinghurst, and is a perfect testimony to the difference between American book designs and UK book designs. You need look no further than the difference between the American version of the Sparsholt Affair and the UK version of the Sparsholt Affair. Now, I have the American version over there on the shelf. But I'm doing a read-along with a bunch of other people, a bunch of other booktubers. So I wanted to have a pretty copy. I wanted to have a copy that looks as good as the book is. So I went on Book Depository and ordered the UK paperback of the Sparsholt Affair. And it was dispatched. And the updates said that it would reach me in 4 days. And that was in 1918. So I don't know if there's those of you who use Book Depository much more than I do. Maybe is that normal? That they will say you'll get the book in 4 days and it's 2 weeks later and it still isn't there? Or do they go astray? Do they? My packages are usually well handled here, but so I keep waiting for that. And I'm waiting for it eagerly, which makes no sense at all, since I have no idea if the read-along is going to work anyway. And even if the book never comes, I already have a copy. So that's kind of strange. But, oh, fantastic. Oh, all right. Great. Okay, so this comes out in April, and I've noticed in these last 20 mail hauls that April is going to be another crunch of a month. It looks to me like 200 books or that I'm going to be interested in are coming out in April. But this is The Man Who Caught the Storm. It's a biography of a storm chaser, legendary tornado chaser Tim Samaras. At the turn of the 21st century, the tornado was one of the last true mysteries of the modern world. At the turn of the 21st century, we knew every single thing there is to know about tornadoes. So last true mysteries of the modern world, I don't know what that means, but it was a monster that ravaged the American heartland 1,000 times each year, yet science's efforts to divine its inner workings had ended in failure. That is absolutely not true. What on earth? It's like saying, it's like the back cover copy of a book saying that someday we will understand rain. Okay, let's just keep going. Researchers all but gave up. Oh my God! What? Until the arrival of Tim Samaras. Oh my God. Cue Brad Pitt. Okay. All right. I understand now what the cover copywriter was going for, but I wouldn't have done it this way. In a field of PhDs, Samaras was self-taught. He chased storms with tools of his own invention and pushed his limits to achieve unheard-of breakthroughs. Yet even as Samaras transformed the field, his risks kept growing because he was driving his truck into tornadoes instead of away from them. When he finally met his match in a face-off against the largest tornado ever recorded, it upended everything he knew. And this is that story, and it's written by Brantley Hartgrove, who is a journalist who has written for Wired, Popular Mechanics, and Texas Monthly. He's gone inside the effort to reverse engineer super tornadoes using supercomputers and has chased violent storms from the Great Plains down to the Texas coast. He lives in Dallas, and this is his first book. Wonderful. Congratulations to him. Okay, great. Of course, have extensive experience with tornadoes myself, including an anecdote that I never tire of telling. Once upon a time, I worked for a newspaper in Iowa. And Iowa has tornadoes, and it has a tornado season. Tornadoes have a season, and I was writing just ordinary op-ed editorials. I wasn't writing book reviews at the time, and I wrote an editorial scolding the whole city for the horrible behavior of its students during the last tornado warning when they were out on balconies, hoisting their beer cups and looking at the green sky, the green, glowing, growling sky. And I wrote a scolding, censorious editorial, and then that evening there was a tornado warning, and I was out on a balcony, same as everybody else. I wasn't in any kind of shelter. I wanted to see this freakish sky. No, but anyway, they're terrifying. Of course, they're quick, but they're terrifying. So you go up in in sheer terror. I mean, a lightning strike, of course, is the end of the world. It's hotter than the sun, but it's only there for a fraction of a second. It's literally over before you know it, and you're either dead or you're alive. And then there's a tornado, and those tend to be quick as well. But the storm is not quick, but the tornado, the touchdown is. They touch down, they dig a furrow against which nothing is proof, and then they go away. And then there are earthquakes. Let's not talk about earthquakes. So what's this next one? Oh, great. Okay. This is Country Dark by Chris Ofort. And let me read this to you. This caught my eye. Let's see here. This is the author's first work of fiction in nearly 2 decades. It's a taut, compelling novel set in rural Kentucky from the Korean War to 1970, in which Tucker, a young veteran, returns from war to work as a bootlegger. He falls in love, starts a family, and while the Tuckers don't have much, they have the love of their home and each other. But when his family is threatened, Tucker is pushed into violence, which changes everything. And I think the thing that probably caught my attention was that bit about this being his first novel in a long time. Because the plot description itself is what I have always referred to as hick-lit. And it tends to drive me nuts. I have found exemplary examples. I have found stuff that hick-lit that was really, really good. Tom Franklin comes to mind, and a bunch of other people. But usually the writer of hick-lit is taking all sorts of easy assumptions on board in order to get the story going and move it along, ending up with truly ridiculous stuff on the written page. And I don't know what this. It sounds like this author is extremely practiced, so I probably won't get any annoying stuff like that. But I'll report that. We'll see. These are all in the new year, just as I was hoping. Okay. All right. I don't know what this is. It looks self-published. Not that I mind. I don't mind self-published at all. This is The Vain Conversation. Kind of a pretty thing too. A novel by Anthony Grooms. Anthony Grooms began his enviable career with the marvelous novel Bombingham that informed the reader that often some of the truest history of Americans is told in the stories of those who live at the periphery of the big historical goings-on. All right, that sentence could have been done better. Now, with his new novel, The Vain Conversation, Grooms continues with that special way of seeing human history with the journey of Lonnie Henson, a white boy in rural Bethany, Georgia at the end of World War II. Okay. Grooms has always had a precise and sure and precious way with words. God help us if he wrote this. And he does not disappoint those who have come to love his work. His way of seeing and hearing the world. He takes the boy Lonnie from the segregated South into adulthood and across the country to 1960 San Francisco and back to the Georgia of the first years of elected black leadership. It is a journey of self-discovery for the ever-vulnerable Lonnie, and from the first horrendous chapter. This is so painful. The first chapter we've just been told is horrendous. And from the first horrendous chapter, for the reader, it is a large American canvas full of recognizable people we know far, far better, because Grooms paints their portraits with colors and words that are so often a grand marvel. All right, so now I have to know who did publish this. Story River Books, University of Southern Carolina Press. Okay, I would have sworn it was self-published. From that folderol on the back, I would have sworn it was. Because self-published authors, regularly are their own worst enemies when it comes to stuff like that. But no, no, it's got a press behind it. I'm certainly going to read it, but we're told by the book itself that its first chapter is horrendous. And you can read it and know what word the author whoever wrote that was going for. They weren't going for horrendous. You know what they were trying to say. But that's anyway. Let's move on here. So this next one is Quidono Press, which is it sounds even smaller than the University of South Carolina Press. This is another little thing. This is due in March. It's by Mary Martin Devlin, and it's called Death in the Rainy Season. It's rather nice looking. Yes? Determined to find meaningful work, recently widowed Sarah LaForge arrives in Zaire to take up her new post at the U.S. Embassy. That sound you hear, as always, is Frida furiously destroying something. The year is 1984, and the expatriate Europeans and Americans Sarah encounters in Kinshasa live in a privileged world where they drink, flirt, and gossip about who is sleeping with whom. Throughout all of this petty activity, important business is getting done. Information is being gathered. Big power plays are being made. Okay. All right, so this is Intrigue in Zaire. Okay. Weird mail haul this is turning out to be. No, probably won't be our last one today, but it's being kind of weird. And then our last thing is a box. So I don't think the Sparsholt Affair is here. I think we're going on my 15th year since I ordered it. It's kind of strange. All right, so what have we got here? We have a hardcover that comes with an invoice. I'm not going to pay for this thing. What are you thinking? All right, so this is by Jonathan Lyon, who was born in London in 1991. There he is in his best train spotting pose. And let's see here. He moved to Berlin in the same year, where he now in 2013, where he now works as a musician and writer. And then his author bio breaks to a new paragraph consisting of one sentence, which is, he has had a chronic illness for over a decade. Then it breaks again, and the third line is, Carnivore, this book, is his debut novel. Okay. Okay. Okay, why did I need to know that? Why is that there, much less set apart in its own line? He has had a chronic illness for over a decade. Why is that even there? Jonathan Lyon was born in 1991 in London. He studied at the Oxford University, graduating in 2013. He moved to Berlin in the same year, where he now works as a musician and writer. Full stop. New paragraph. His lunch really didn't agree with him. Full stop. New paragraph. This is his first book. Okay. Do I have anything other than this? No, I don't have a pub sheet. So this thing came to me lousy with invoices, but with no information. All right. Well, anyway, it's called Carnivore. The subtitle or the little epigraph is "Let the Villain Win." And it's very nice looking. And being hurt can be thrilling. That's the back with no cover copy. So let's see what we can find out about this. I have to assume from that weird line in the author bio that this book has either a character with a chronic illness or is about chronic illness. Not that that excuses it in any way. But anyway, meet Leander, lover, fighter, liar. He learned long ago that nothing is as intoxicating as blood. But whether it's his or someone else's doesn't matter anymore. There's a mysterious pain in every muscle of his body, and it's got so bad that he'll do anything to escape it. Up to now, it's been his secret, but it's hard to remain invisible when you cause destruction everywhere you go. Frida can attest to that. So when he comes to the attention of one of London's most infamous criminals, Leander decides to put his appetite for violence to the ultimate test. Explicit, addictive, and explosive, Carnivore is a stunning literary thriller and a cult classic in the making. Huh. I like the ambition of that, very much so. I wonder if it's any good. Let's go to page 112 and find out. You mean Child Roland to the Dark Tower came? I asked drowsily. I was saying Kimber could be the demon in the tower. The poem ends with the knight-errant blowing his horn, about to charge at, quote, the round, squat turret, blind as the fool's heart. But we don't know what he finds inside it. The poem is more concerned with the phantasmagoric journey there. He sees a horse, emaciated and hideous, and says, I never saw a brute I hated so. He must be wicked to deserve such pain. I apply that line to myself once a week, so... Okay, the main character has a chronic illness. And then he passes an abandoned torture wheel, quote, fit to reel men's bodies out like silk. It's a similar image to the one in Kafka's In the Penal Colony, though Kafka's machine is described by an officer as providing a sort of religious transcendence after 6 hours of torture. But when the officer himself climbs into the machine, it breaks and he brutally dies, without the promised transfiguration. Then, in maybe the most concise statement of Kafka's whole philosophy, the narrator says, "This was not the torture the officer wished to attain." Both Browning's poem and Kafka's story are fantasies of suffering with no redemption. Keep in mind, this is a character talking, and no one talks this way. Both Browning's poems and Kafka's story are fantasies of suffering with no redemption, quests with no climax. But instead of despair, there is an uncanny exuberance in the process of perception itself, as though all one needs to do is survive simply to learn how to luxuriate in horror. When you... And then the person's interrupted. I would have interrupted them a long time ago. "It's poison," Dawn said, slumping into me, breathing too shallowly to shout. "You, Kimber, poisoned me. This was for you, weren't it? You knew, but it's not poison, is it? It's too warm for that. You're putting me in a kangaroo pouch. You gave me too much, Leander. You know you gave me too much." She was so weak she could only whisper. I watched her lower into my lap with an abstract fascination. Okay, so that huge chunk at the beginning was our hero Leander, our anti-hero Leander, who's got I guess a chronic illness and also is a bit of a blabbermouth. All right, so how strange. Oh, this turned into a very strange mail haul. I'm not sure that I like starting off my bookish day this way. I mean, all these things should be great for all I know, but still. All right, let's do the Steve Bierman here. We have Carnivore, a debut novel. We have The Price of Aid, about financial aid in India. We have Holmes Entangled, which is a kind of a meta pastiche of Sherlock Holmes and Arthur Conan Doyle. We have The Man Who Caught the Storm, a debut work of nonfiction. Thumbs up, congratulations to the author. We have Country Dark, which may or may not be Hicklit. We have Death in the Rainy Season, about a woman finding reinvention in Zaire. And we have The Vain Conversation, the first chapter of which is horrendous. And there you go. That is not the kind of mail haul that is... We'll hope next time that we have a bunch of Steve books. That would be nice to compensate. But in the meantime, I'm gonna tootle off to the real world, and I will see you all soon. Thank you, BookTube.